My name is Nakia Jordan, and I'm talking today about depression and the different aspects of depression and my actual experience with depression, people. But I've dealt with depression, I believe, since I was a child, and I just kind of feel like at this point that it's best to share with not only everyone that's watching, but my daughter in particular, so that she can, view from my example that it's okay to talk about. It's something that's common among people, and it's something that can be dealt with. And basically, that's it. So let me go into when I was a child, is when I felt it started. Um, I was born to a teenage mother who was born to a teenage mother. My grandmother, however, was married when she was a teenage mother. However, she still was a teenage mother. Soon after my youngest uncle was 2 years old, they split and got a divorce. Um, and half of the kids went half and half. Um, when my mother got pregnant, she then, I believe, had to stay with my grandmother, and um, she was a police officer. And one of the only brother, her and my uncle, my oldest uncle, were one of the only brother and sister teams in the 80s, black African American, to actually graduate the police force. So that right, and so that was and she did it with only a high school education. That was her to prove to my uncle, who had a college education, since she had me and couldn't actually get her college education. She was proving to my uncle that even though she didn't have a college education, she could do what he did, and she did. So that was already, being that I knew that growing up, that was already one of the biggest deals for me. When I got to about the age of 5, I had my father in my life, but you know, he was not as prevalent as the rest of the people there. He didn't stay with me, so I kind of questioned that. But she often let my father come and see me. I didn't know at the time that he had paranoid schizophrenia, and that was the issue that prevented him from actually, my mother letting him see me on a regular basis. I mean, she would let him come around, but it just had to kind of be supervised and things of that nature.
So did you feel a sense of abandonment from
I
that?
did, because I didn't understand why. Because I knew my dad did want to see me,
Correct.
and he would tell me that.
Correct.
But of course, he wouldn't explain that he had a mental issue, and that's why my mother, of course, a police officer who is, already told to uphold the safety of others, is of course going to uphold the safety of her own child. So, but when I finally figured it out, and that was the horrible thing, that I figured it out from an actual event of an occurrence, and I, don't want to taint my dad. He's still alive and everything, and I don't want anyone to, mock him or whatever. So I won't really actually go into the detail of it, but I will just say that when I was 5, an incident happened on the news that was involving my dad and his mother, and I lost my grandmother, and he had to go to a mental institution from it. So it was at his hand that I lost my grandmother. So then I couldn't really process that exactly because I was only 5. By the time I reached 8, I just knew that my dad wasn't around because he was sick. That's basically, and I kind of knew that my grandmother was deceased, but I didn't know the particulars. Then, when I was 8, my mom committed suicide. The police force actually is one of the highest suicide rates of a profession, due to, I believe, the depression that police officers actually experience every day on the job and things that they see. Um, my mom, when right before she committed suicide, August 26th, she was clinically depressed prior to actually committing suicide. She had a run with a partner. They always put females back then with males, make sure that they, Well, her and a male partner pull up on a scene where there was a man who they felt had mental or drug or something, he was being irate and bullying and throwing and, causing a scene with other individuals. So when they step on the scene to accost the gentleman, he immediately picks up her partner and just slams him to the ground. So then she's left there standing like, okay, yeah. So at this time, it wasn't just you could shoot anybody. That's what I keep asking my grandmother. How come these cops can just shoot anybody now? Fast forward, she then in the incident with the gentleman that I was just mentioning, she got picked up by her neck and thrown. I think it was like 3 to 4 feet, and didn't break her neck, but had severe injury to her neck and had to be hospitalized and had to be put on medical leave for about 2 to 3 weeks. Well,
did your mom share all these events with you? Is that how you found out?
That's how I found out. Okay. Well, my grandmother had to tell me because she was in the hospital for a while, and I, as an inquisitive child, at this time I'm 8 years old, so I'm like, where's my mom? I know she's a police officer, she works late, but where is she? I haven't seen her in days, and then that's when she had to explain to me that she had an incident, an accident, and that she would be okay, and this and that. And so I accepted that. I finally got to go see her. When we went to the hospital, however, she didn't seem to be okay, like everyone was explaining, But, I was like, well, she'll just get better. As she came home, she was dealing with some incidents with my stepfather. Her and my stepfather had actually, I had lots of incidents of being proud of my mom. Get out there. He, however, had cheated on her with another individual, also further causing her depression, something she was not sharing with me for her.
So it goes back to another case of abandonment.
Abandonment, once again, or whatever. So she was dealing with that from me because I'm constantly asking her, where are all these men? What do you keep doing to the men? Basically. And so I would hear her at night, she would talk on the phone and be fine and everything by day. But at night, it would be a constant crying and a constant issue of what have you or whatever. And I recently even spoke to my grandmother about how I wish that, even as a child, and that's something else that, I think this will help. If you can teach children kind of the signs of depression to help and tell someone else for their parent or loved one or anybody that they should happen to encounter, that they can tell there's something wrong. Because even as a child, I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know what, but I knew that there was something wrong. And that's also something that I feel that if you can, I know that it's kind of taboo to talk about, but if you can at least express to your children, hey, if you see someone not doing so well, or if they normally talk to you and they're not speaking, or if they happen to tell you something and say, don't tell someone, but you feel you should tell someone, tell someone.
Speak up about it.
Speak up about it, because I really feel like I could have, if I would have told my grandmother or my grandfather or someone those things, that she was crying all night, things of this nature that they didn't know, because she was a very strong person. And it, I don't blame myself, but it could have maybe been a way for her to get some assistance and help more than,
it could have saved your life.
It could have. It could have. And that's why I'm talking today, to let people know how easy it is to save a life just by saying something. It can be that easy. So then after that, when I had no mom and no dad, at this point I'm 8 years old.
8 years old with no
mom, no and dad, no dad.
And only your grandmother.
And only my grandmother. I didn't understand why God did that, period. So I even went through a phase where I didn't believe in God because of that. That took until I had my daughter. And then at 15, I became, I was always an exemplary student. I always made good grades. That never stopped. That's always a weird thing, because usually that's one of the signs that most people have a hard time functioning at that level, at the same level they were. That's one of the ways you can tell that someone is depressed. However, I did kind of what my mother did, and I kind of kicked into overdrive. So like I was making sure that you couldn't tell by the things that I was doing that I was depressed, even though
Because
I
some
was
people function at a higher level
right.
because they don't want everybody to know
That's
that they're
correct.
down. So
And
you're
that's
going
what
to
I
do one
was
of the
doing.
two. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. I was functioning at the highest level that I possibly could to try to, negate any that I'm having any problems. I did that all the way up until I was about 15 or so. And then I start feeling lonely and in the need for some type of male or, figure of not abandonment.
Correct.
And so that's when then I started experimenting and going on different dates and this and that. But I never, it never led me into promiscuity or anything like that. The first time that I really had a full sexual encounter, I got pregnant. And I was 16 years old. And so that changed my life actually for the better. I know that, most people look like at it in my family because of me being so studious and me being this and that or whatever. But like I said, I really was depressed and they didn't know it.
Right.
I was contemplating suicide every other day. I was.
Do you know how old you were when you first contemplated suicide?
Well, actually, and I believe that had to do with my mother. I'm not sure which of, but as soon as my mother killed herself, I contemplated suicide as well. So that's another thing that if we can't get a hold on the depression, it just perpetuates a cycle. It's going to keep perpetuating a cycle because um, you feel like, well, that person did it and now they're out of pain now, or whatever. They're not having to be here like me and go through it. So if I do it, then I'll be out of pain too, and I'll be with that person.
Correct.
And so, and that's I feel today that that's the reason when I had my daughter that negated that feeling. I knew then that I couldn't do to her what I felt my mother had done to me, even though, what my mother had did to herself was not about me. And I often told her how proud I was of her. And I felt and thought that she was proud of me. Well, when she did that, it felt like she wasn't proud of me, that she was ashamed of me, and that if I wasn't born, she would have had it easier and she wouldn't have had to do this.
Correct.
Which that was totally not the reason at all. Really, me had mostly not to do with the reason. It was, like I said, her personal matters with her husband, the incident that she had on her job, the fact that she was functioning at a high level and trying not to let anyone, in her circle. She did, the police officers, like I said, since they are the highest as far as suicide, they do require you to take counseling. But if you can pull the counselor, you're done. It's just the assessment. And she, of course, could do that with no hands down. She was fooling her whole family into thinking that she was operating at a regular and efficient level.
So dealing with depression, who is your outlet? Because most people, when I hear you talk about your mom, I hear you talk about how basically she didn't have an outlet to talk to somebody about.
She did. My outlet, funnily, has been different friends at different stages of time. Usually is someone that doesn't know me so well because of the fact that I don't want to be judged or I don't want you to later on when we're having a conversation amongst all our friends mention it. I just feel safer if you don't really know me or come around, then how's it going to get out there? That type of thing. And I think that's really an important thing. That worked for me, but the most important thing that I'm trying to get across is that you do need someone that you trust, and don't feel that someone is not trustworthy just because you don't know them.
Sure.
If they come from, especially if there's their profession, I know that I feel like in the Black community we don't use professionals for what they are for just because of the stigma. I'm currently getting my doctorate degree in finance right now. It's helped me to understand more than just, of course, the financial aspects of things, just the whole way of going about critical thinking in the first place. my critical thinking tells me that, well, if I'm, operating and I'm still operating and I'm highly functioning and everything, but then I crash and have these low moments or whatever, if I just talk to somebody, maybe I can prevent
Correct.
that whole crashing, building myself up back situation, etc. And I believe that that's how, maybe some races or different people and aspects of life tend to get further than we tend to get. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with racism,
Nope.
or holding it back. There's plenty of opportunities out here for any and everybody. You just have to actually seize the opportunity.
Correct.
And take it at face value. Use the tools that are there for you, such as professionals and this and that, for what they are for, and then go forward. So I believe that that's the first thing, that dealing with depression, try to at least think about someone that you may trust, that you can tell anything to, and don't feel like that everybody's against you, against you or judging you. Because, and then the thing about it is, even if they are, so what? Who are they to judge you? And I think that's really a thing in the Black community where, you often, oh, well, they're talking about me and they're, they feel like this and that. And then, when they're talking about, when these people start talking about, they talk about Jesus, they'll talk about anybody.
Correct.
And if you spend your life worrying about them talking about you, then once again, you're not moving on to your next phase of life.
So if you have maybe one or maybe two to hit home messages you would like to send to the world or to anybody that ever sees this video about, fighting depression, what would that be? Because that's what this whole series is all about. About one, just raising awareness for that it's okay to go and get help. Two, let's try to fight it, because it's something that, as you said earlier, us as normal people, we get judged and our friends don't want to come around us. Superstars, quote unquote, if they come out and talk about it, then nobody watches their movies. Well, nobody watches their movies.
Right.
Nobody buys their music, or nobody wants to be a part of them until they die.
Right. Then they're a hero.
Michael Jackson, for example.
Yeah.
So my thing is, if you had to hit home and say, what is the one or two messages you would like people to know as you share your story, what would that message be?
My thing is that, being from a child of someone who was clinically depressed and committed suicide, the thing and to remember is that there are other people counting on you. If you kind of keep that in the forefront, I know that's, I don't mean it pressure-wise. I just mean, if you think, okay, most people think, well, if I leave, nobody will care. That's the thought process behind it. Oh, nobody's going to be any different. Everybody's just going to be fine. Well, that's really not true, because I know that that's what my mother thought. Well, if I leave, my mother can take care of her better, or this person or that person can take care of her better. And really, no one can do for you what you're supposed to do in your life. Like, if you have children, or if you have anyone, friends, or whatever, different people count on you. Don't forget that. As an inspiration, not saying that you have to uphold a certain level, just count on you as a person that's gonna be there. Like, if you look at it like you're not alone, and I think, and I don't know how, because I know that that's one of the issues of depression. You feel alone. You don't feel this and that. But if you can just kind of keep in mind first that you're not alone, and that there are people that are not judging you. They're just looking for your hi, or how you doing, or whatever each day. Then I think that could help. If you could find a way to fight the feeling of being alone. That's the major thing that I think that a lot of people do commit suicide or do other things, because they just feel like no one will care and they are alone, is the first thing. Anything, just find out what you could be passionate about and what makes you feel good, because I know that that's a lot kind of from a doctor's aspect. The reason why we're depressed, our serotonin levels are low. and they need to be increased. Well, to my understanding and the way that I have dealt with my depression is to find things that do increase my serotonin level. Being with my kids increases my serotonin level. I love to be with my kids.
Right.
So I do things with my kids. Then when I start feeling, upset or what have you. But each person knows what makes them feel better. Even if you are depressed, something makes you smile sometimes. Something, rocks your boat. Do more of that. Don't say, or feel guilty about taking pleasure in that. That's what you need to change. That's what you need to invoke change. You have to get your body to a certain level where you can actually get up and do the normal things that you have been doing. If it never reaches that level, it'll keep you in a cycle of that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned cycle. One of the things that I talked about as far as dealing with life coaching and dealing with people that deal with depression, it's something that it was ingrained in me when I was younger that I figured out on my own that I always wanted to make sure was something that I did, and it's called break the cycle. And breaking the cycle of depression is something that, listen to your story. 8 years old, you started suffering depression, but it came from two other people that were suffering depression.
Right.
And you didn't have a mindset or the knowledge to know to break the cycle.
Right.
And I asked you this question just because you do have three kids.
Yeah.
Just by knowing a little information, you told me that one of your children deal with depression. Have you taken steps or have you tried to help that individual break the cycle that her mom dealt with? Because it's a cycle that keeps going on. So there's something that you try to help the individual with.
This is one of the things that I'm trying to do. Before this, the things that I suggested were for her to talk to me anytime she felt, and all I can suggest to her is that she not feel bad about it. That's the first thing I tell her, not to feel bad that she has depression or whatever her issue. I don't know if she has depression, but I kind of see some of the same signs that I was going through. So the first thing that I tell her is don't be ashamed of it. The second thing that I tell her is that I'm available for her anytime to talk, and if she would like to, I can help her find someone that she should talk to. I encourage her attending any group activities that are for her and her age group or any interest that she has in. I promote, like I said, her doing anything she likes to do. Don't the adult stressors are kind of getting to her. And so I tell her, just basically kind of put that in God's hands. There's only certain things that you can do. If it's out of your control, it's out of your control. And so that's the steps. But I've noticed that, like other blacks, that I don't think that she is okay with and comfortable talking to other people, and I'm not being a good enough example. I'm talking the talk but not walking the walk. So that's why today I'm doing the video to show her that okay, I'm admitted to it, and I'm telling how I deal with it, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Gotcha. Well, we appreciate that, and I think this video is a big step for anybody who's dealt with depression in a chronic matter or in a light matter.
Right.
I've had my battle, and I've been able to overcome it and things like that. But I think it's a huge thing for you to be able to share this with your daughter, and hopefully that brings her out of her shell and want to share her story as well. But then at the same time, you probably don't realize how you're saving her life or how you're saving someone else's life. And that's what this whole video series is all about. If I can tell my story, you can tell your story, and the next person can tell their story, whose life will we save along the way? We never know. My biggest thing for you is knowing you for 20 plus years, never had a clue. Knew you had family and lost your parent or whatever,
yeah,
but never knew what was underneath all of that. And
yeah,
I have to say, totally never knew.
right.
you know, from playing basketball, from hanging out, from just being friends.
Yeah.
No one, I would have never known this had I not put the message
so
out there and you said, hey, I want to be a part of this.
Right.
And my message to everybody is you just never know what someone else is going through.
That's
Just
right.
because it looks good doesn't mean it's always good. So you always want to say hello and be nice, but then also, you know, hey, are you really doing okay?
Right.
And you never know, that person says, you know what, I really am dealing with something.
That's right.
And I have to say, you are one of those people that I just never ever knew and would never ever
Yeah.
would have thought of it and known that.
And that's, I think that's you're right, that's the important message today, that it could be anyone. Like I said, now I'm getting my doctorate degree. I'm doing great. I'm getting my business together. I don't have as many bouts with depression as I had previously. But like you said, it's still a cycle. My daughter, or is exhibiting signs, and so I want to make sure, and it may not, be, I don't know, but if it is, like you're saying, it's just so simple to just say a nice gesture to someone, just ask them, how are you doing today? And if they tell you no, they're not, say something, help them out. You have to, each person has to come to their own acceptance. And I think that's why it's so massively, still a problem so much, because each individual that we're talking about that's depressed, millions and millions of people, each one of those people have to come to terms with what they're doing, and that's the hardest part. When you feel like you're alone and have no help.
Exactly. Well, that's a perfect way to end it. And that's true. People have to do that. People have to own up to it. And once you own up to it, then you can start dealing with it. Just like any problem or any situation that you may have, you gotta come out of the denial process first, then deal with it. Then you can move forward and have a prosperous and graceful day or life. So,
and be no different from it. Actually better. I feel I'm better after I learned these tools.
Gotcha. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.